I reached out to Ray Bularz, who I want so bad to call him Bularz, and I told him I almost think he should change his name because that's a pretty gnarly last name.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, Bularz. Maybe that's his alter ego. 2 beers in, he goes from Bularz to Bularz.
Yeah. Maybe it's TikTok handle.
That's right.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. So Ray, again, was just such a great conversation. He is one of the, I don't want to say few and disrespect a lot of people, but he's a true professional. I mean, he is a craftsman. He's been doing the marketing, the advertising thing, the branding thing for so long and really cares about the craft.
Yeah, it's almost, he seems like a pioneer in a lot of ways in marketing. And it's very interesting for me being younger and coming into this space, learning from those people who have been doing this since before I was born. They have so much knowledge and so much experience, and you really do just learn from those kinds of people and, learn from your elders, they say.
Don't ever call us elders. Yeah, no, it is. It's great. Like we're, as we were just saying, like it gets everything's so tactical now. Like, how do I get more followers, or how do I go viral, or how do I, do this one thing? And Ray really has a deep understanding of how to build a strategy around an audience and have a conversation of value with them and create emotional connections that are long-lasting journeys and not just
a one-night hit. Viral can be hit or miss, and you may go viral one day and the next day you're flat on the ground, but there's no sustainability in going viral.
That's right. It's that's exact. I mean, that's such a good way to put it. No sustainability, or he doesn't have like those visionless questions of how many views did I get last night?
Yeah.
Type of a thing. But anyways, he's got a lot of great insight, and it really is it's really a good listen. So I hope you guys enjoy. So joining us today is Ray Bularz, who I want to call Bularz, and I might do that anyways. Ray started his career back in '92 when Dre dropped The Chronic. He's been an art director, a teacher, a creative director, a brand strategist, a founder, a CMO, a chief brand officer, which is your current position. Yes. And you operate your own website. You seem to really be in the thick of what's happening in marketing and advertising these days. So I'm super excited to talk to you and learn everything that you know and then steal it from you.
Okay, fair enough.
So kind of let's go back to when it all started. Like, did you always know that you wanted to be in the business?
Actually, I went to school for film and minored in creative writing. So for me, it was about just expressing my creativity. I used to take still photography, and then I would kind of use long shutter speeds or to make movement happen with light and people. So it kind of progressed into film. Went into broadcast, worked for ABC Network in Hollywood for a year, and then came back to where I'm from, which is Baltimore, and worked for one of the top agencies in town, WB Donor, which really helped me understand sort of how to reach your target audience and speak with them, not at them. And that started the foundation for me to be a student for life, like absorb. I was working with crazy pros who I was like a sponge that was just overflowing. So it felt good to be in that position and have that opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that having, good people in the beginning helps to set that foundation, like you said, for kind of like you're a seeker, right? You're always looking to see what's going on. And I think my wife kind of thinks I'm ridiculous where I'll just stop and pay attention to commercials because and it's a lot of it actually breaks my heart because most of it's so bad, but a good spot is really kind of, it's something where you're like, I see what they're doing. They did a really good job there.
Yeah. My wife is the same. and especially when it comes to movies, because I'm all about continuity, especially with TV spots. And, there's a leeway for creative license. But when it doesn't match, I'm the first one to see it because I'm an attention to detail type of guy, and it drives you nuts. Like, just watch the movie. So I'm always looking, hey, that angle's wrong.
Right. Are you the guy that catches, like, when somebody is in a, they're in like a sci-fi or, like they're in a movie with dragons and they're wearing a watch? Like, are you the person that always catches that?
I mean, if I see it, I'm going to call it out. Yeah. And, sometimes as storytellers, because in marketing, we are storytellers. And as a chief brand officer, I'm in charge of the story for the brand I represent. And when you're looking at it and the story isn't matching up for you, that's always hard for me too. Like, there are leaps and there's creative license, but at the same time, it's like that would never happen.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes hard to see creative work because you're critiquing it when you should just be enjoying it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that is lucky for me is that with ads, I'm always that way about it. Like any ad, I'm that way about it. But a movie or TV show, I can largely just turn my brain off and just that's when I can let it go. But there are times when you're just kind of like, okay, I kind of see what you did here, and I'm going to move on. So we're going to kind of jump around a little bit.
Sure.
So you worked at a TV station, and then you went to Donner, right?
Well, I worked for ABC Network in West Hollywood, so the network is not a TV station itself.
Right.
And then, I went to WB Donner in Baltimore. They're headquartered out of Detroit, but in Baltimore, there used to be National Bohemian, and that's what started that office. And then they represented the Baltimore Orioles, and then they started really going crazy with all kinds of different clients, international clients, and automobiles, and pharma. It was pretty exciting because I could get my hands on different things, or at least see it actually coming to life, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. So I worked at J. Walter in Detroit.
Okay.
And I was on the Ford account, but we got to see other accounts kind of in the constellation of the stuff we were doing. And you get to see some of that, and that was cool. And there were some really smart people there. And I learned a lot, mainly just by being a smart ass and being put back in my place.
Well, I think there's things that you learn that are great and things that you learn that you couldn't do.
Yeah.
Right? It's a combination of, hey, I would never do that. Well, thank you for showing me that example of what not to do.
That's right. This is really embarrassing, but I'm going to tell the story anyways. I remember there was a guy who worked for the Ford racing team, and he was always in and out. And he showed up late one day, and just being like a young, dumb idiot, I looked at my watch and looked at him, and he goes, "Don't you ever fucking show me the watch." He's like, "I work 10 times harder than you, and I've been here." I mean, he just dressed me down, and I'm just standing there, and it's this open bullpen of people too that were like, Gail just messed up.
Yeah, that's before Apple Watch, because you could have said, "Hey, I just got a message."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this was back in the day, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So,
right.
Okay. So when you left the agency life, and then you had a couple other positions in there, and the kind of the thing I want to focus on is what made you start your own agency, and tell me about that time in your life.
So that was sort of around the Great Recession, right? It was a pretty big leap to start your own business at that time. However, I had a client who the agency that I was working for was going to get rid of them. And a bold move was I went into the two owners and asked if I could pitch them because they were going to get rid of them. And I was like, as a side gig. You know, and they took easy and said, "What are you talking about? You're fired." But they kind of laughed at me and said, "Sure, go ahead," like almost daring me to do it. I had a really great relationship with the director of marketing and the board that she reported to because I would pitch them all the time.
Yeah.
So I called their marketing director and I told her that I would love to figure out a way that, after their contract was up with my agency, the agency I was working for, maybe I could pitch and start my own gig. We became really good friends.
Yeah.
And she was like, sure, let's see it. So I went in, pitched some work to her. Then she got me a meeting with the board and basically said, we'd love to work with you. So I went into the agency I was working for. After that, remember, this was a side gig, and I was like, I'd like to give my 2 weeks because I got a new client. And I'm like, ooh.
Joke's on you guys. I'm out of here.
So, we're still friends to this day, the three of us. And it was kind of funny because like some of the first work I did from at the local Addy level, I won Addies for them. So they were like,
yeah.
But they were also good cheerleaders, and really, they're an awesome group and a great agency.
That's unique, by the way. That's not
Absolutely.
That isn't a common thing.
No, it's not. But, I would say that's when I was young and maybe a little naive as to what those consequences could have been. But at the same time,
for sure,
it was a great learning experience. And, marketing and advertising is taking a risk. So I did that, especially in the time frame when it was like people were being laid off.
Yeah.
During the Great Recession. And I was like, I did it. And I was like, this worked. And so then built from there. I built a small agency. But we did a lot of fun work, and we're very agile and could pivot better than, it was sort of like a speedboat compared to a big ship of an agency.
Yeah.
Like we could pivot without losing integrity in our work.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. No, we work with other agency partners, and they it's a little bit like trying to, U-turn a school bus when you need them to do something, where we're like, okay, we're already, while y'all are talking about it, we just finished it. Like it's already kind of done, which is there's good and bad to both sides of that. But by the way, anytime you start, especially creative people, when you start something and you put a name to it, that's a hard thing to do when it's yours. Like I know, and I love the name. Oomph is such a cool, idea for a name. And so anyway, so you started this, and then what was the arc of that? Like what happened there?
So built a pretty good business. I had another agency approach me. We were going to work on a campaign together because we had a smaller digital, we didn't have an e-commerce arm to it, but we had a digital arm to it. We weren't really in the e-commerce space. This other agency, that was their biggest thing. They did that. And we had similarities with their digital marketing. So we did this project together. And then the owner asked me to, meet him for a drink, and we just started talking. And he was like, how strong we could be if we were one force. And I was like, we're laughing, kind of joking around about it. And then, long story short, he proposed like an acquisition of my company. And I was like, wait, it's my baby. What are you talking about? And it's like a child, I don't want to give it up. But then it started to kind of make sense. And as a student, like I said, all creatives are students, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least in my mind, they're learning more things. And this was a cool way for not only my agency people to learn, but also me, like getting into that space and then seeing how we can be a full service agency instead of them just being an e-commerce. So that's where it went. So they acquired my agency, and I had to work for them for like 3 years so that they could pay for it.
Right.
And that's how that came to be. And then in that same sense of growing and always learning, there was an opportunity through Capital One to go and work for them and talk about a big ship.
Yeah, really big ship.
Yeah, I worked for a lot of amazing creatives there. Like my immediate boss he was just a creative guy.
Yeah.
And so it was easy to say, hey, I want to kind of leave and do that. It was a different transition going in-house from being, a standalone agency.
Yeah.
But it was using the same learnings that I had from my clients and what they were doing in-house. And we were an arm to it. It actually made sense. And Capital One, works with other agencies out there, like Martin Agency, for a lot of their stuff. So it was kind of an easy transition.
Right. Did you find that, obviously going from like where you were in charge of everything to then someone assimilating your agency to a degree and then going into this big space, did you feel like were there a lot of politics that you had to deal with? What were the pluses and minuses to that transition?
I wouldn't say there was a lot of, everywhere there's going to be a little bit of politics, right?
Yeah.
But they gave you sort of a rope to hang yourself with. They gave you the freedom to think a little bit different. Capital One is actually a digital company wrapped in a financial wrapper. So they always are looking, and what intrigued me was the target audience. How can we reach them a little bit quicker?
Mm-hmm.
So from a digital perspective, I was there when we developed our backup bot, our virtual assistant, and it's called so one spelled backwards. But it was the first time I got to see engineers behind the scenes and how they came up with creating this bot.
Yeah. By the way, better than capital spelled backwards. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. It actually sounds a little techie when it's right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a pro. Like I got to see kind of behind the curtain of how engineers kind of bring into it. But I had the financial background because a lot of my clients were financial.
Yeah.
Banks and credit unions and that kind of stuff. So it made sense from a linear perspective to work for a bigger bank. It just so happens that one of my clients was Chevy Chase Bank, which was the local Montgomery County, and then Capital One acquired them. So I don't know if that was one of the reasons why they're like, hey, let's talk to this guy because he already worked with Chevy Chase Bank.
Yeah.
But from a con perspective, yes, it's a lot more people involved. So I was talking earlier about a big speedboat on your small agency. Well, this was a large ship. So you had to learn to have patience on things. Yes. And you also had to learn that there's a lot of opinions higher up. But fighting a good fight for your creative and making sure that a solid strategy and message behind it helped that to ease those politics, right? And there were some politics of you get to work on this and you get to work on that kind of thing. But I feel like that's a normal thing when it comes to in-house a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely took care of who had the talent and actually learning. They had on their campus in Richmond classes that you could learn all kinds of things. Like I took some leadership classes taught by top tier instructors that really helped me think a little bit different. Even though I was a leader of my own agency for years, it's a different approach.
I'm laughing because it's I say this a lot, which is just because you own a business doesn't make you a good business person. And starting an agency, you learn all the things you don't know. You know what I mean? There's a ton of stuff. So, and I think there's an assumption like, oh, well, you must be all these things because you've done these things. And it's like, it was sort of learning on the fly, Yeah,
it was. And then knowing your limitations and hiring the pros, right? So, talking about business, I had someone that was helping me from a business level, who making sure I was doing everything that I needed to do to keep my business afloat, having those business planning meetings where instead of creative meeting or a branding or a strategy meeting. This was more business strategy that I didn't even take into consideration when I was starting.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot of hats you have to wear. When you get to a certain point, hiring those pros is really important.
Yeah. How big did your agency get from a headcount perspective?
We started out with 2.
Yep.
And then I was doing some freelancers that would come in as we started building. 25 was the end number before we were acquired. But, not everyone came with the acquisition because either they didn't want to or there was duplicate roles. So we tried to find ways to get them in, and then the roles didn't match up to what their expectations would be.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. That's cool. So, fast forward a little bit, you're in the real estate space now, which is in a really interesting transition overall. There's a lot that's going on. I feel like there's there's maybe 2 camps, right? There's the camp that's still, and not that there's no blend here, but there's the camp that it's still very much a human business. And there's another camp that's wants it to be all digital.
Sure.
I was just watching a realtor.com ad yesterday, and they're really like, all you have to do is click on the house. And then we bought it, and we wouldn't have found it if we hadn't have, gone down this road. And it didn't talk about any human interaction. It was only about, using their platform to buy the house.
Sure.
But, so let's kind of start how long have you been in the real estate space, which is kind of a transition from financial and some of those other things to a degree, but sure. and then what's happening there? What's going on there?
5 years I've been in the real estate space, and just kind of again learning about how it works. I mean, I've purchased houses in the past, right? So I know how that works. But one of the things that we do different than a platform in this industry is communication and relationships, right? That's mm-hmm. what we are.
Mm-hmm.
You build that relationship with people so they become advocates for your brand. So that experience of really understanding your audience and their needs. The CEO here always says it's not a listing appointment that you're going to meet people, it's a listening appointment. So you're listening to what their needs are, and then you're addressing. We're all problem solvers when it comes to that.
Yeah.
In my role, I get to own the brand story and help tell that story in a unique way. That it's not as cold as let's go to this platform, find a house. And it's also not that easy.
Right.
For the last 3 years with real estate kind of going nuts and, supply and demand and understanding that you can get top dollar more with a human than you can with a machine. Because people want to shop with a friend, right? If you think about it that way, how does this house look on me? Is this the right house? Just like if it was, is this the right tie? Do you like it?
That's a great way to put it, right? People do want to shop with a friend. It makes it a fun experience. And that's really kind of what it comes down to. And really, probably at the end of the day, that's also going to help with any of those, what could I, should I, would I have done something differently?
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
That's what makes it a smooth transaction or experience for the buyer or the seller, right? Knowing that, and that's a stressful thing. It's the largest transaction anyone's going to make in their lifetime, basically.
Yep.
So when they're doing that, oh my gosh, I'll address all the pressure, but you want to have those experts. A machine can do so much, but after you make that purchase, do you want to have buyer's remorse because you worked with the machine, or do you want to work with a professional that can actually help? Right.
By the way, when you say that's the largest purchase they're ever going to make in their life, I don't know if you've ever been down to Alabama, but you'll see some really small houses with some really big trucks out in front.
I know.
So I love this idea, right? People want to shop with a friend. Is this what you're communicating to people, and how do you do that, right? How are you conveying that?
So we've got over 300 and some odd agents. So each one of those agents represents our brand, but they also have their own personal brand. So actually teaching them the basics of the foundation of a brand and how they can reach their audiences to increase their book of business. And I always preach, like, we shouldn't be speaking at our audience. We should speak with our audience no matter what we're doing.
Yeah.
Whether it's TV, print, digital, direct mail, whatever it is, email, you want to be that friend.
Yeah.
You want to be that answer to solve their problem. So, like, working with them on a personal level, a personal brand level, actually helps them to understand, what their target audience needs, but also pinpoints how they speak with them.
Okay. How big is the geographic area you guys cover?
So we're in a couple of states. We're in Maryland. We're also across the bridge, we call it, the Bay Bridge that goes over to the Eastern Shore. So we're over there and on the coast. But we're also in Delaware. Mm-hmm. We're in North Carolina and Florida. So we've got a very diverse area that we kind of thought through. But, our goal is to be mid-Atlantic and the southeast. Eventually, that's sort of our vision, because we're building our brand's footprint, and that experience is seamless. We're not changing anything because we're in a different state. We're giving the opportunity for people to experience what we give, our value from in the markets that are new.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel like that differentiation that you guys are communicating, that's resonating? And on top of that, look, training anyone is difficult. Right. It takes so much repetition and there's so much, but you've got 300 agents of varying educations and ages and what they know and what they don't know. That's not a small task, right?
No. So there's a couple of things. We have an internal university called North of You, where we give continuous training, again, with amazing instructors. I teach classes from a brand and marketing perspective.
Humble brag right there.
For sure. And then, real estate regulations and everything you can think of. But our CEO and our chief strategy officer teach an out of comfort zone class, which actually helps people to think outside of what they would do, right? And it's a game changer for agents because it's sort of what would the CEO do of a brokerage in this situation, and putting you into that situation is kind of the goal.
Yeah.
So that we're all, expanding our comfort zone so that we can actually expand our business.
Yeah.
But you do have different levels. You have rookies that are coming in, and you have people that have been in the business for 30 some years. We have a percentage of our agents have been with our brokerage for more than 10 years. And I would say it's probably 60%. So they see the value in it and the opportunity to grow. And that's what we do here.
Yeah.
So, right.
Okay, well, let's kind of sort of shift this a little bit. With what you guys are doing, I want to talk, what are the biggest challenges you see in the real estate market in the next, 1, 3, 5 years? Using your crystal ball, what do you see happening and what challenges do you see or opportunities do you see?
Even though there's AI out there and there's virtual assistants on websites, people still want that human contact. We learned that through the pandemic.
Yeah.
How that changed people. Oh my gosh, I want to be face to face, but I can't. I'm isolated. And they want that experience to create a relationship with people. So that's sort of our differentiator. But how I see it playing out is it's always going to be a push-pull between digital and or human.
Yeah.
So I see in the next 5 years more of that coming out. But we also saw in this industry how different brokerages try to do all in on digital and spending a ton of money and losing the shirts.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. So you think that, finding the balance between digital and human, right? Because it's really what we want is we want the information right now, but we want a human to help explain it to us and put it in a way that's easy to understand, that we can, metabolize, and it makes it where we feel good about it.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the whole shopping with a friend. You want someone that a trusted advisor, someone that's going to make sure that they've got your back. And it's not such a cold thing. To me, the digital real estate platform is like the self-checkout at a store. You're just kind of scanning yourself, and it's that brand experience. Like, the only time you have an interaction with a human is if it was waiting for assistance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, hey, I don't know what I did here.
Right. And that person's not exactly happy about giving you assistance. There's this comedian, I'll remember his name after this, but he had a joke about that where they said, you can go over there and scan your stuff by yourself. And he's like, I don't work here, do I? Like, is my shirt say I work here? He's like, I'm not trying to get a job. Like, I just want to check out.
Sure.
And it's you see a lot more of that. And I don't know that it's necessarily helping. I mean, obviously, you can have one person running 4 registers. That makes sense from their perspective, but from the customer perspective, what are they losing, right? Mm-hmm. Based on that. So that makes a lot of sense. So the human element, obviously, there's you've got all your training there, and that's a lot about getting people to, on your end, to understand that idea, which is so succinct and so great. Like, people want to shop with a friend. The acronym CASE, copy and steal everything. Like, we're going to case that because that's awesome. But from a digital perspective, tell me a little bit about kind of the 2 parts again. What are the things where you feel like you've had some wins, and some things where y'all have been really creative and used something, in a different way, or even something where we've just done really well with X. And then on the other side of that, what are some of the pains that you're dealing with from a marketing perspective?
From a digital perspective.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have a digital strategy behind what we're doing. And what that does is, just like any other marketing strategy, you're asking someone to give to get. What are we giving them? So we do buyer guides, seller guides, different things like that. We do a lot of interactive content, conversational marketing, even though it's from a digital perspective. And we are employing this year a virtual assistant, kind of like one, that will be AI generated to help people quickly, right? The one thing that digital does is it gives you answers sometimes really quick, but you have to tease them enough to get them to reach out to a human, right? So that can be a struggle sometimes to get people used to it. And we have demographics from generational, from the silent generation down to Gen Z. And each one of them, when they're buying or selling a house, you have to speak and message them completely different.
Yep.
Right. So there's a couple of strategies that are going out. So it's the classic approach to real estate or the modern approach to real estate. So we're trying to deploy marketing that works that whole spectrum.
Okay. Which is no small task.
It's not.
Well, and so, I told you I have a little bit of experience in automotive, and it's, we use this same sort of analogy in a lot of ways. It's like they're always trying to put 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag,
Sure.
And you see that sometimes when you go to real estate websites, and it's like there's so many calls to action for so many different people in so many different ways that it's sometimes can be off-putting, right? In general,
Yeah.
or even and I think for you, you'll totally get this and you'll understand this, is the psychology of how humans operate is a
Sure.
really fascinating thing to try to understand. And one of those things is if I give you too many choices, you'll make no choice at all.
Right.
And how do you deal with that with all of these different, like you said, demographics of people of different ages, and geographically, people in Florida operate a little bit differently than people in Chevy Chase.
Sure. So it's just being relatable, and reaching them where they work, live, and play. Right. So when we look at those types of generational divides, I'm not going to waste my time on the silent generation, maybe the older boomers, on digital ads that they might be afraid of. Maybe they're not clicking on them. But I'm also going to gear campaigns to the older and younger millennials and throwing in the Gen X there too. It's about how comfortable people are with technology.
Yeah.
And understanding those target audiences. It's marketing 101. But again, reaching them where they work, live, and play. And the silent generation, they're on digital only from a social media perspective to see what the children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren.
That's right. They're checking in MySpace pages right now.
Right, and I'm not going to waste dollars trying to reach that audience. That's not going to do anything anyway. So it's all based on data. I'm a bit of a data nerd.
Okay.
So I look at those things and help that decide how we're going to reach them.
So for
strategy perspective or execution.
Are you have you created, and you talked about 101, which is the funny thing, this goes back to, professionals versus just people who do the thing, right? We're all told like you should be creating personas and buckets and communication models for these individuals. Have y'all done that and like gone and said, okay, this is the silent generation and this is my Gen Z guy and this is how they're going to communicate? You'll have all that?
We do. And I actually teach a class to agents called marketing to the generations 101 and then messaging to the generations 102. Because you have to understand the different generations people you can message to.
Yeah.
Right? And I identify where they are even from a digital perspective in the silent generation to the boomers. And knowing that about 40% of the market in the next 5 years are going to be the older, younger millennials and Gen Zers. So we better know them. We better understand them. We better know how to speak with them and find where they are so that we can deliver marketing that actually compels them to act.
That's right. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is create this emotional connection with them. So they're like, yes, I feel that way. And
that's where our TV campaign that we actually just did during COVID, we actually shot during COVID, which was very interesting. Where we were making it relatable. And the concept there was when I was a kid, we didn't have beepers, cell phones, social media, anything like that. So if we wanted to reach kids in our neighborhood, we'd get on our bikes, ride around the neighborhood, and whatever house had all the bikes screwed all over the place, we would drop our bike and go in. That's where the kids are.
That's right.
So the idea there was to make it relatable from a nostalgic perspective. So we had kids who were obsessed with real estate and especially our brokerage, speaking like real estate agents and talking about houses, right? Making it relatable, almost like the Seinfeld gang. They get together and they just have a relationship. So we took those characters and created a Jerry, a George, Kramer, and Elaine, just as personas or personalities, and then they just speak like real estate people.
I got to see that. You'll have to share that with me.
Yeah, you can find it on my website.
Okay. All right. I have your website pulled up, so I'll check that out afterwards. That's awesome. I love that idea. So how well has that been received? Pretty well so far?
It has. So before I got here, there was a lot of one-off campaigns.
Yeah.
Instead of, creating a story that could be told. And, you learn that through the years of working for agencies outside agencies and in-house, that it's all about the stories that we're telling and not just one quick story. Let's keep it going. And just like insurance companies, they do it. Flo, how many stories have we heard with Flo and her gang? Geico, the Gecko, always telling a different story.
Yeah.
So we applied for that same principle, turned it a little bit on its ear, and created it for the real estate space.
Did you ever see the Johnson Automotive stuff out of North Carolina for it was a car commercial? I'll find them and send them to you. It's about badgers. Okay. And it's perfect. It's like the best automotive commercial campaign ever. And there's a story behind it, but nothing really interesting, but it's a great campaign about just turning this whole idea of what people really feel it is and just shining the biggest light on that possible. I would say the downside to our campaign was we worked with kids, and kids don't stop growing. So we shot 5 spots, 3 in one day and 2 in another, during COVID, with all the restrictions and having a COVID person on set to make sure. And working with kids, you can only work with them at certain hours. But we were telling that story, and then we created 3 more scripts for the next year. Well, our kid, he was the smallest kid, and when you looked at the spots on my website, the smallest kid grew leaps and bounds to the point where when I was pitching this to our CEOs, it's a husband and a wife on this brokerage, they asked where the little kid was. And I'm like, that's him right there. And they're like, wow. Yeah. He was maybe 3 foot nothing, and then all of a sudden it was 4 or 5. Yeah. I was like, geez. But yeah. So it worked though. You'll see. And we take the scenarios of how do kids think? Like we have one that I'd love for you to take a look at and let me know your feedback. It's called The School. Okay. Where the kids actually try to sell the school. I like it. Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I love that idea. I'm already I'm there with you. I'm running mentally. So what have been some of the pain points? You said you're a data guy. I don't know if you've gotten into GA4, which we all hate. But what are the pain points that you're like, man, I wish I had a solve for this? Inventory. Talking about real estate. There's a lot of people, there's 3 things we can control: is inventory, interest rate. I'm forgetting the third eye, but really, watching the interest rate going back and forth has stopped people from putting out their houses for sale. Mm-hmm. Why would I leave 2.5% to go to 7%? That's right. I'm never leaving my house if that's the case. We were just talking about generations earlier. The boomer generation that's split into 2, olders and younger. They're retiring where they live. Mm-hmm. So they're messing up the inventory there. Mm-hmm. They're like, why would I move from my house? This is my forever house. I'm not moving. It's paid for. Yeah. Why would I move? Yeah. Or if they are moving, they're just keeping it, and maybe they're going to use that as what they give to their kids one day. Sure. There are a percentage of them that are moving in with their next kids and they're creating an in-law, but that's a smaller percentage. But again, that's a tough thing we've got to get through is inventory and convincing people that now is the time to sell. Because in real estate, and I sound like a real estate agent, you date the rate and marry the house. It sounds,
gimmicky, but it's really true.
Yeah.
I mean, no one stays in a 30-year mortgage if the rates fluctuate down.
Right.
You're going to refinance. So it's going to happen. And you're talking about data. So in this space, I really pay attention to the economists out there that are forecasting what's going to happen, especially in the real estate space. And some of them work for the government, and some of them work for NAR. Lawrence Yun is the chief economist at NAR, and he forecasts what's happening, and he's been pretty right.
Mm-hmm.
So I watch him, and then we change and tweak our strategy for marketing based on economists and how they see, the next year. And they do it by quarter, like first quarter, second quarter, and they also split up the country into 4 quadrants. So what's happening in, the Northwest might not be what's happening in the Southeast.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. That's true. I mean, we live in, a bubble, right? Where we are, which is, that go 10 miles this way, and that's a totally different thing. It's crazy what's happening. And I think eventually, and you're already starting to see this. I mean, those interest rates you talked about when you started your agency, that's what the interest rates were in 2006, 2007. Yeah. They were 8%. Right. Mm-hmm. So that was normal. Like, I just think it's the people that like that younger generation, that's one of two things. It's either people that are at 2% and they know the difference and they're like, I'm not leaving this for anything. I'd rather just keep that house and buy another one than I would to sell this one, for that and lose that rate. But the people that didn't know the difference don't know what it was like to be at 7 and 8%. And to them, it might scare the hell out of them. But we've kind of been there, done that.
Yeah. Well, you also have to look at the generations of what kind of debt they're carrying. School debt.
Yep.
That's a big topic out there.
Yeah.
Relief and forgiveness. But at the same time, with the pandemic, a lot of people use their credit card a lot. So they have credit card debt on top of school debt. And then you're trying to help them understand. So talking about my background with financial, it plays into the real estate space because you're teaching them basically finance 101. How do I afford a house and, get out of renting and have some type of ownership?
Yeah.
Without a truck outside in the trailer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And not as uncommon as you would like to believe. Thank you so much for having this conversation. I've got like 3 pages of notes of things I wrote down, and I enjoyed every minute of it. It's very, very nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, you too.
All right.
Thanks.
Yep.
Bye.